Hi, Rob. How's the course going?
Oh, hi, Mia. Yeah, great. I can't believe the first term's nearly over.
I saw your group's performance last night at the student theatre. It was good.
Really? Yeah, but now we have to write a report on the whole thing, an in-depth analysis. I don't know where to start. Like, I have to write about the role I played, the doctor, how I developed the character.
Well, what was your starting point?
My grandfather was a doctor before he retired, and I just based it on him.
Okay, but how? Did you talk to him about it?
He must have all sorts of stories, but he never says much about his work, even now. He has a sort of authority, though.
So, how did you manage to capture that?
I'd visualise what he must have been like in the past when he was sitting in his consulting room listening to his patients.
Okay, so that's what you explain in your report.
Right.
Then there's the issue of atmosphere. So in the first scene we needed to know how boring life was in the doctor's village in the 1950s. So when the curtain went up on the first scene in the waiting room, there was that long silence before anyone spoke. And then people kept saying the same thing over and over, like, cold, isn't it?
Yes, and everyone wore grey and brown and just sat in a row.
Yes, all those details of the production.
And I have to analyse how I functioned in the group, what I found out about myself. I know I was so frustrated at times when we couldn't agree.
So did one person emerge as the leader?
Sophia did. That was okay. She helped us work out exactly what to do for the production, and that made me feel better, I suppose.
When you understood what needed doing?
Yes, and Sophia did some research too. That was useful in developing our approach.
Like what?
Well, she found these articles from the 1950s about how relationships between children and their parents, or between the public and people like bank managers or the police, were shifting.
Interesting. And did you have any practical problems to overcome?
In the final rehearsal, everything was going fine until the last scene. That's where the doctor's first patient appears on stage on his own.
The one in the wheelchair?
Yes, and he had this really long speech with the stage all dark except for one spotlight. And then that stuck somehow, so it was shining on the wrong side of the stage. But anyway, we got that fixed, thank goodness.
Yes, it was fine on the night.
But while you're here, Mia, I wanted to ask you about the year abroad option. Would you recommend doing that?
Yes, definitely. It's a fantastic chance to study in another country for a year.
I think I'd like to do it, but it looks very competitive. There's only a limited number of places.
Yes. So, next year, when you're in the second year of the course, you need to work really hard in all your theatre studies modules. Only students with good marks get places. You have to prove that you know your subject really well.
So, how did you choose where to go?
Well, I decided I wanted a programme that would fit in with what I wanted to do after I graduate. So I looked for a university with emphasis on acting rather than directing, for example. It depends on you. Then about 6 months before you go, you have to email the scheme coordinator with your top 3 choices. I had a friend who missed the deadline and didn't get her first choice. So you do need to get a move on at that stage. You'll find that certain places are very popular with everyone.
Don't you have to write a personal statement at that stage?
Yes.
I'll get some of the final year students to give me some tips. Maybe see if I can read what they wrote.
I think that's a very good idea. I don't mind showing you what I did. And while you're abroad, don't make the mistake I made. I got so involved I forgot all about making arrangements for when I came back here for the final year. Make sure you stay in touch so they know your choices for the optional modules. You don't want to miss out doing your preferred specialisms.
Right, well, for our presentation, shall I start with the early life of Tor Heyerdahl?
Sure. Why don't you begin with describing the type of boy he was, especially his passion for collecting things?
That's right. He had his own little museum, and I think it's unusual for children to develop their own values and not join in their parents' hobbies. I'm thinking of how Heyerdahl wouldn't go hunting with his dad, for example.
Yeah, he preferred to learn about nature by listening to his mother read to him, and quite early on he knew he wanted to become an explorer when he grew up. That came from his camping trips he went on in Norway, I think.
No, it was climbing that he spent his time on as a young man.
Oh, right. After university, he married a classmate, and together they decided to experience living on a small island to find out how harsh weather conditions shaped people's lifestyles.
As part of their preparation, before they left home, they learnt basic survival skills, like building a shelter. I guess they needed that knowledge in order to live wild in a remote location with few inhabitants, cut off by the sea, which is what they were aiming to do.
An important part of your talk should be the radical theory Heyerdahl formed from examining mysterious ancient carvings that he happened to find on the island. I think you should finish with that.
Okay.
All right, Victor, so after your part, I'll talk about Thor Heyerdahl's adult life, continuing from the theory he had about Polynesian migration. Up until that time, of course, academics had believed that humans first migrated to the islands in Polynesia from Asia in the west.
Yes, they thought that travel from the east was impossible because of the huge empty stretch of ocean that lies between the islands and the nearest inhabited land.
Yes, but Heyerdahl spent ages studying the cloud movements, ocean currents, and wind patterns to find if it was actually possible. And another argument was that there was no tradition of large shipbuilding in the communities lying to the east of Polynesia. But Heyerdahl knew they made lots of coastal voyages in locally built canoes.
Yes, or sailing on rafts, as was shown by the long voyage that Heyerdahl did next. It was an incredibly risky journey to undertake. Sometimes I wonder if he did that trip for private reasons, to show others that he could have spectacular adventures. What do you think, Olivia?
Well, I think it was more a matter of simply trying out his idea, to see if migration from the east was possible.
Yes, that's probably it. And the poor guy suffered a bit at that time because the war forced him to stop his work for some years.
Yes. When he got started again and planned his epic voyage, do you think it was important to him that he achieve it before anyone else did?
I haven't read anywhere that that was his motivation. The most important factor seems to have been that he used only ancient techniques and local materials to build his raft.
Yes. I wonder how fast it went.
It took them 97 days from South America to the Pacific Islands.
And after that, Heyerdahl went to Easter Island, didn't he? We should mention the purpose of that trip. I think he sailed there in a boat made out of reeds.
No, that was later on in Egypt, Olivia.
Oh, yes, that's right.
But what he wanted to do was talk to the local people about their old stone carvings and then make one himself to learn more about the process.
I see. Well, what a great life. Even though many of his theories have been disproven, he certainly left a lasting impression on many disciplines, didn't he? To my mind, he was the first person to establish what modern academics call practical archaeology. I mean, that they try to recreate something from the past today, like he did with his raft trip. It's unfortunate that his ideas about where Polynesians originated from have been completely discredited.
Yes. Right, well, I'll prepare a PowerPoint slide at the end that acknowledges our sources. I mainly used The Life and Work of Thor Heyerdahl by William Oliver. I thought the research methods he used were very sound, although I must say I found the overall tone somewhat old-fashioned. I think they need to do a new, revised edition.
Yeah, I agree. What about the subject matter? I found it really challenging.
It's a complex issue.
I thought the book had lots of good points.
Hello, are you Dr. Lindsay, the returning student's advisor?
Yes, that's right. Are you Frank? Your appointment wasn't until 2, but that's okay. Please come in and have a seat.
Thanks. I like to arrive early whenever I have anything to do.
That's certainly a praiseworthy habit. Let me see. It looks like you've taken a long break from school, and I understand you wanted to have a chat about what you should study if and when you return for further classes.
It's such a big challenge. I don't know if I'm crazy for doing this or not.
Believe it or not, I know exactly what you mean. Before I began working here at the university, I taught primary school for nearly 10 years. It takes a lot of courage to go back to school.
I feel more shy and scared than the primary students I teach. In the schools I taught, I found today's youngsters are very sure of themselves. In terms of intelligence, I have a lot to teach them, and the maturity level of much of my class leaves something to be desired. But in terms of confidence, wow, a lot more confident than I am now, that's for sure.
Stop fretting. A brave man is a coward who refuses to run. Let's talk about your strong points. You seem an intelligent man. What is it you would like to study?
You see, I've been teaching children for a few years, but I think I'm happier teaching adults.
I think teaching students in middle school is much more satisfying because they end up being much more grateful for your work. If I may ask, what got you interested in teaching adults?
A lot of things, I guess. I met my future wife back in my first year of college. She always complains that I was more interesting then. She says that now I talk like I'm 7 years old. That's probably from being with children all day.
Again, I know just what you mean. My husband used to say the same thing about me when I taught kindergarten. Anything else?
Yes. Fairly often now I run into former students and we talk. Some of them are getting close to being grown up. I guess I think more and more about how people develop over time. So I'm interested in the results of education, the final stages.
I see. Well, coming back to the university can be both difficult and very rewarding. There are some problems unique to returning students, older students like yourself. What do you think is your greatest weakness?
I actually think my confidence is getting better. I'm definitely overcoming my introversion and starting to be much more comfortable in front of a class. To tell you the truth, I'm afraid I'm rather behind the times about many things. It's more difficult for me to chase after the popular things youngsters are fond of, such as iPhone, Twitter, if you name it.
I think I understand. How old are you, 35? People at your age still go back to school for further education. I was a bit the same way. I mean, I didn't study at university till after I had a family, a husband and one child. My point of view was a lot different from your average 18-year-old girls, I can tell you.
Gee, that sounds pretty rough. Family and college? Clearly you weren't unsuccessful, though.
It was, Frank, it truly was. My first term at school was extremely stressful. But, excuse me, you're not here to listen to my life story. We're talking about your plans. Is there anything unique I should know about you or your past experience or plans?
I'm afraid not. There is nothing interesting about my career or plans. It's really not too impressive.
Now, I forbid you to talk like that. This is your one life, and if you're not interested, why bother living it? Don't be so humble, Frank.
Okay. My wife says I'm a wimp.
Let's talk about your dreams a bit. You want to teach adults, you said. What would you like to teach them?
Well, when I first came to college, I really liked languages and literature. A lot of people have told me that for practical reasons, it would be more rewarding to choose business management as my major, but I made up my mind to study liberal arts once I got the idea of going back to school.
I must say it's refreshing to meet someone who knows there's more to an education than computers and finance. Let's have a look at the university course catalogue.
Excuse me, Dr. Lindsay, before we do that, could I maybe ask you some questions about changes in university life? I think I need to discuss that so I know what to expect.
Of course, I'm here to help you. The biggest thing to get used to is the change in technology. Professors present things on huge screens, many of which are interactive computerized whiteboards. You can write on them still and use them like a touchscreen. They're really handy. No more sloppy scribbled notes on the projector. Let's see, I doubt you'll be living in student housing, so I won't go into all the improvements there. Another major change that you'll enjoy is the plethora of resources available for students. As a student, you have 24-hour access to the gym and library privileges that include the use of school computers to scan, copy and print. And of course the media library, which contains movies from all genres, and most of the movies listed on AFI's top 100 movies of all time. The dining facilities are also not what they used to be. They offer choices for all diets, and you can expect a hot meal any time of day.
Wow, things really have changed. I'll be sure to utilise all those great facilities in my time here. Thanks for all your help, Dr. Lindsay.
Hi, Nicole. As you know, we've got to decide on the best ways this university can reduce its waste. You inspected the Eastern campus, and I did the Western buildings. Did you do all the interviews as well?
Yes, I interviewed all the staff, who made some good observations, and I interviewed some of the students. The students said little that was interesting. They don't seem to care that much. It was the cleaners, surprisingly, who revealed the most relevant facts.
That's not surprising to me. They empty all the bins, so they see the waste firsthand, whereas the staff just throw things away without thinking. What item was most commonly disposed of?
Well, it really depended on where I interviewed. In the cafeteria precinct, obviously paper plates and cups were thrown away all over the place. There was almost no attempt at recycling. However, across the university in general, it was paper copying that filled up most bins, far more than plastic or other forms of waste.
Do people care about this, then?
Well, some do, if you can believe them. I must have interviewed about 30% of customers in the cafeteria, and the results were mixed. Out of all the people I interviewed, well over half, maybe about 55% of them, were quite honest about it, telling me that they had little concern. The other fraction, 45%, were more troubled.
Yes, but do they do anything about it?
Surprisingly, quite a significant percentage do something, even if they aren't particularly concerned. I mean, small things. About 10% bring their own cups to the cafeteria, for example, and at least 1/3 said they use recycling bins. So, in total, it's an equal split between those who do something or those who don't.
So why do so many people remain inactive, particularly over an issue they should care about more?
I think they do care, and many of them are prepared to do something. Obviously, there's an element of laziness, but I'd say that it's relatively small. If they knew what to do, and if stringent systems existed, or if the importance of this was made clearer to them, I'm sure you'd see a much larger percentage of people actively working towards helping our environment.
Well, there's cause for optimism at least. Clearly then, there's a significant waste of paper here at this university, so I've worked out one practical suggestion which could help reduce it, specifically the waste from the excess photocopying.
Let me hear it then.
Obviously, for a start, we've got to ensure that everyone, including the staff, without exception, copy both sides of a page. We can't tolerate single-sided copying. It's just far too wasteful.
Absolutely. Just more trees being chopped down.
But as people are doing copying, there may be adjustments and practice copying, producing single-sided copies or blank pages not wanted and not intended for use. These need to be deposited into a tray for intended recycling. You know, for recopying onto the blank side of the page.
But people don't usually do that. I'm afraid it's just human nature. No matter how unimportant the copying is, they prefer to use fresh paper.
Yeah, I agree with you, which is why you need to display these papers right in front of everyone with a clear sign, "Please reuse," to make it easy for them to do so.
They still won't do it.
I know. That's why you take some of these papers and regularly stack them inside the copier in a special tray once a day, say in the morning.
Well, that's getting better, making it easier for them to use the paper. But still, I'm afraid many won't.
That's why you allow everyone to select this tray when copying. You distribute numbers or codes to every person, giving them special access to this recycling tray. Every time they use papers from this, it's tallied up to their account.
I know I'm sounding a bit negative, or even cynical here, but why should they bother using that tray?
Because the person who does the most copying from this recycling tray gets, say, a cinema pass or lottery ticket or some other sort of reward.
Oh, right. Now that's a system which might just work. Let's trial it in the office and see what happens.
Anne, we really need to get working on this gallery marketing assignment. We've only got 2 weeks left until the end of the month to set up.
Right, so how about getting started now? We need to work through the instructions.
Well, we must search for one area from tourism industries, like the museum or gallery. There are lots of sites online.
What are they about?
The National Science Museum, the History Museum, the War Museum, the Tate Modern Art Gallery, and so on.
You got more?
We've got plenty.
I've got an idea to find out the best comment. Coming this Friday, we'll get more information at the London Museum because it shows all the visitors' guidebooks of museums or galleries in the UK. It also runs a small workshop about non-profit tourism industries marketing.
Great.
So after visiting there, we have to use research methods, such as telephone interviews, questionnaires on the street, or sending out emails.
Actually, we don't have a choice. We have to send the email.
Right. We don't have to waste time deciding among them. By the way, how do we get the responses?
Let's contact the London Museum's Information Centre. Actually, it may be helpful to us to collect data through our head course leader.
How many people do we have to interview?
Well, we have to split into 3 groups, and it looks like we have to interview 30 people for each group.
So 90 altogether then. It depends on the ages too, right?
That's right.
So are they all the requirements?
Yes, looks like it.
Firstly, which part are we going to choose? My preference would be a modern art gallery, since that's where I spend most of the time.
I think you've got something wrong. I don't think there are abundant differences in the exhibitions there. I mean, you get young and old, man and woman, amateur and professional, all going to the galleries.
Right, so let's make it a ceramic exhibition then.
So basically, what 2 groups will we compare and contrast for that?
Male and female?
Absolutely. Also, most of my respondents like the same ceramics as me. Also, I think different age groups could be changed to highlight differences.
I think you're right. I'll take some comment. The age groups are teenagers, 20s, 30s, 40s and over. What do you think about this?
Great. That will give us more detail.
So how about the kind of ceramic they like? Let's give them some options and then we can just tick boxes.
OK, let's have Asian, European, African. What else? Something special?
We should include the Incas in Peru. Some people like this style, you know.
OK, and then we should know about their understanding of ceramics.
They can learn about that thanks to a gallery curator who can inform them about the patterns and markings through picture and local clay.
I'm curious about how they were made. I mean a process with painting and things embedded on the surface. At that time, the equipment and materials were not good, compared with the present day.
I agree. We should also include an earthen vessel, of course.
Right. The next step could be about where they were actually from.
They were made from local clay, weren't they? Things such as mountain, lake, basement and so forth.
I think so. One more thing is the colour on the bottle. How did the ancients get the tone?
On the internet, it said they got it through dried plants. They were working again to make a tone, drying and sorting.
OK, I see.
To get more hard tone, they included other strong herbs or something.
At that time, the colours were used by the rich with property.
Great. You've got plenty of data, David.
It's just beginning. We have to look for something special with more details and history for the presentation next week.
Hi, Kate. How did you like the first lecture?
Hi, Julie. You mean that lecture about brand identity?
Exactly. When our professor described how brand names are created.
As I understood, he'll teach us practical tips and techniques to create better brands. And what about course duration? I heard it's 5 weeks.
No, 5 weeks is without the final project. The total duration is 7 weeks.
I forgot about it. It's the first time I'll be doing a group project.
And I'm a bit nervous to work in a 5-people team.
I think it's going to be okay.
He was talking about the right marketing strategy. Did you hear that?
Yes, that was the most exciting part of the presentation. The key thing is to grab people's attention.
That's true. And how do you like the curriculum?
I think it's nice. It's great that we'll be learning marketing in detail, as I've always been interested in this subject.
Me too. And after that, we'll be training to design custom logos.
The professor told that the curriculum has been modified, and we won't learn design this year.
What a pity.
The same with product management. But you shouldn't worry, they just combined these 2 sections into a larger one called branding.
Then it's good. Moreover, they've added something called e-commerce this year.
It's a great alteration, and the course is kept up to date. Online trading is so popular now.
And after that, we'll learn advertising.
Yes, and also analytics.
Really? Won't analytics be replaced with customer attraction?
Yes, you're right. I forgot about that.
I think that's all. The professor also teaches a course called Business Strategies. So, we may take his other course next year.
Dear, and where is the next lecture?
It's in the big classroom on the ground floor.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Don't forget to take your last week assignment.
Okay.
Hi, Elaine. I was hoping I'd see you here. How are things?
All right. You?
Not bad, but I'm beginning to worry about that assignment.
What, the one on theory and practice?
Yes.
When's it got to be in by?
Next Thursday. And I just can't get to grips with it.
Yes, it's a tricky one. I'm hoping to get down to it over the weekend. I'll tell you what, there's Dinah. Let's see if she has any pearls of wisdom on the subject. She took the theory and practice option last year, didn't she? And got an A+ for it, I think.
How does she do it?
Oh, let's ask her. Hi, Dinah. Hard at work?
Not exactly. The lecture's just been cancelled, so I've suddenly got a free morning on my hands.
Oh, that's lucky. You've met Neil, haven't you?
Yes.
We were just talking about the theory and practice assignment we've got to hand in next. Can we just pick your brains a moment?
How far have you got with it?
Still at the reading stage, really.
Are you? One bit of advice I definitely give is not to spend hours wading through that massive volume by Jesperson. It really isn't very helpful. I think the only reason they keep it on the reading list is that the library has got so many copies of it. Personally, I found the essential source was Parisi. Have you read her yet?
Parisi? I don't think so.
That's a great book. It must be on your reading list.
Right.
Another one I found very useful was the article called something like Practical Theories by, was it Williams or Willard? Yes, Willard. Also, if you want to look at case studies, that small book of Ron Brown's has got some interesting stuff in. You know the one I mean?
Ron Brown. Yes, I looked for it in the library, but it was out on loan.
Yes, it's a very popular book. Did you try the recall system?
The what?
Don't you use the recall system? You should, you know. You just have to take a pink slip from any of the librarian's desks, fill the details of the book in, put your departmental address on the back, your departmental address, not your home address, and hand the slip in at the information desk. Then, check the mail in your department twice a day, say at 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, for a slip telling you the book is ready to collect. Last week, I recalled a book at lunchtime and got the slip telling me it was ready just 4 hours later. That was exceptional. It usually takes about 3 days.
I didn't know you could do that. Is it expensive?
No, there's a nominal charge, 25 pence a book, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's well worth it if you're preparing for an assignment. Are you going to be working together on it?
I'm not sure.
I would if I were you. You get so much more out of the assignment that way.
But surely the tutors would notice that our essays were the same.
No, I'm certainly not suggesting you should actually write the thing together. I'm talking about when you first start on a big assignment. I think it's a good idea to find 2 or 3 others on the course who live near you and divide up the reading load between you. Then you can meet up again a few days later and take it in turns to summarize your reading for each other. At the next stage, we go round the group explaining our essay plans, which makes it easier for individuals then to go off and write the first draft of their essay on their own. Later on, we usually exchange drafts and give feedback in the group before finally writing our essays individually.
Do you really do all that?
Usually, yes. It makes the whole thing much easier and more enjoyable.
Right. I think I need another coffee before getting started. Can I get you one?
Yes, why not?
Did you go to the first social science lecture yesterday?
Yeah. Didn't you see me there?
No, I was trying so hard to understand the lecturer.
What didn't you understand?
A lot of it, really. For example, he said we needed to study history as part of the course, but I didn't get why.
You probably missed it. He said early on that we need to learn from our past mistakes.
Right. But he also said we need to put ourselves in the place of our ancestors. Why is that?
I think the point is that it's not enough to know how they lived and what they did. We need to know what they thought.
I see. And I've written transferable skills in my notes next, but I have no idea what that means.
If you study social science, you learn skills that you can use in a job.
Oh, right. Is that all? Okay. But why is that?
The point he made was that in studying social science, you use a flexible and adaptable approach to learning. He also kept mentioning all the other subjects we will need to study as part of the course. I didn't write them all down, did you?
Some of them. I think I can make sense of my notes. The first one was anthropology, which he said would cover prehistory and archaeology as well.
Okay.
Then there's economics. I wrote down that this was not meant to mean that we will spend all our time looking at economic theory, but more that we need to see how humans behave.
That's good. I don't think I could handle economic theory. He said something about education too, didn't he?
Yeah, he said we'll be looking at how cultural information is handed down from one generation to the next through teaching children.
He said we'd be focusing on geography too, but I can't really remember which aspects. Can you?
I noted it down, I think. Here we are, yes, particularly in relation to urban planning. It's law that I got confused about. I didn't understand why he linked that to economics.
I think he meant that laws affect the way wealth is distributed.
That makes sense. Now, what are the science wars?
Okay, I did get that. The science wars are about how social science collects information. In sociology and social work, and in social science generally, they can only study patterns of behavior and observe. If you compare that to the way scientists work in physics or chemistry, it's very different because they use specific experiments that can be tested and which give concrete answers. Social studies is often accused of being unscientific. That's all.
Okay, but it still looks like a good course, doesn't it? You don't have any regrets, do you?
None at all. I'm looking forward to it.
Welcome to the Study Centre of Cardiff University. I am Professor Jody, your student study consultant. I know as a new student, you will meet some troubles with your studies and life, so we will have 3 consecutive lectures. Study strategies on today, social life, and local snacks on next Monday and Tuesday. I will introduce you to some study skills and answer your questions. Well, first of all, let's talk about some factors which can affect your study. What problems do you meet as a freshman?
Yes, Professor, what's the biggest difference between university and middle school regarding study?
A good question. I think the biggest difference is that a university student will have to do a lot of work on their own, such as doing research.
Do you mean we should read and think independently?
Yes, that's the first important factor of being a successful university student. Fine.
How about taking more lectures? I heard that they can help our studies. Is that right?
Some students prefer to attend more extra lectures to improve themselves, but in fact it might affect their own study. My advice is to use your holiday time. You should know how to take control of your time and work effectively.
Fine.
Another factor is to overcome your stress. Many students usually have a feeling of homesickness, particularly for overseas students. There is no family or friends here, so maybe loneliness and heavy studies can lead to great stress. So, I suggest if you come in contact with such troubles, it is a good way to make some new friends, or take up some social activities on the weekends.
How do we know about the social activities, Professor?
You may get the activity schedule from the Student Union. Fine. Well, let's talk about some study strategies. Where should we begin?
How about listening to a lecture?
Yes, I am worried about that too.
Okay, if you cannot keep up with the lecturer, why not prepare a recorder or something like that to record the lecture?
Good idea.
And I think you should prepare lecture materials in advance and then check your notes with other students after the lecture if you cannot take them all at the lecture.
Great. And how about presentations? Do we have to do many presentations?
Yes, you will do presentations nearly on all subject lectures.
Should we use PowerPoint?
Yes, of course.
And can we choose a partner to do a presentation together?
Maybe or maybe not. Sometimes you can have a group presentation, but you have to do it by yourself on most of the lectures.
Okay, I know.
Professor, I know we have to spend a lot of time reading material. I want to know if we can get them from the internet.
Sometimes you can read materials at the computer at home.
Really?
Yes, but you must have a username and password from the computer center.
Fine.
And usually you will have many academic journals to read, so a proper reading method is very important.
What kind of method?
The approach I use is skimming. It means to skim the book first to see what's important and what isn't.
Do we need to master a skill of analyzing reading?
Yes, that's the next important method of reading. The method can help you to remember what you have read.
Fine. And how about the assignments?
You will write a lot of essays as your assignments.
Essays?
Yes.
How about the strategy of writing essays?
First, you should make a good draft plan for writing and pay attention to the deadline.
Deadline?
Yes.
Can we extend that?
You could ask your personal tutor.
Fine.
And before handing in your work to your tutor or department, you should do proofreading first to check form, grammar, spelling, and references.
Okay.
If you meet some other problems with your study, you can ask your tutor for help.
Hi, Dave. As you know, I've asked you to come here today to discuss the assignment for our biology class. We must decide what we should do about this very important research work.
The whale survey. I was also hoping to share some ideas with you. So let's start.
OK, I've dug into some journal articles to see what sort of questions we should consider. Most of them include watching time and strongly urge it to be the top concern. What do you say?
The watching time should be carefully chosen, since I've heard a lot of unnecessary failures concerning picking the wrong time when it all went stormy and murky, and then nothing was seen during the whole field trip. I mean, they could have avoided that easily.
Right. Then we should also pay close attention to the sea's surface, because no one wants to encounter the failures you just mentioned.
I think we'd better hope for the best, that it will be calm, with no choppy status.
What about the weather conditions?
That definitely should be taken into account, as it correlates with all the former factors. Most important of all, as a sighting is made, position and environmental parameters are recorded on standardized sighting pro formats, including time, visibility, position of the ship, using a global positioning system, wind speed, and wind direction.
Shouldn't there be a set limit for the visibility level, say 50 meters?
Cetaceans are really sensitive to sound. They are able to know that something's coming after them, so they would hide in order to avoid possible danger. So let's make it 100 meters, shall we?
Yeah, that might be better. Oh, in that case, we'd also need to pay attention to the appearance of the fishing boats, you know, for all the noise that they would make.
That's right. Although observations were regularly made, we know very little about whale vocalization and how they use sound in their behavioral and social interactions. So to understand marine mammals' social interactions, we'll need to use passive acoustic recordings to track and assess the individual behaviors of whales, as well as to identify their appearance.
Okay, then what about scales?
Oh, for each sighting, the number of animals should be counted. The group size, I mean. Also, we need to identify the species, possible age, and sex of the individuals. Speaking of identifying species, we need to find out the unique physical features of each whale. Let's start with the sperm whale. The sperm whale is the largest toothed whale, yet it's only a quarter of that of the blue whale. Its unique body is unlikely to be confused with any other species, and that distinctive shape comes from its very large, block-shaped head, which can be 1/4 to 1/3 of its length. The sperm whale's flukes are triangular and very thick. It has a series of little bumps on the back of its fluke instead of having a dorsal fin. The largest bump is called the hump by whalers, and can be mistaken for a dorsal fin because of its shape and size. Then there is the northern right whale. Right whales have round bodies with arching rostrums, V-shaped blowholes, and dark grey or black skin. The most distinguishing feature of a right whale is the rough patches of skin on its head, which appear white due to parasitism by whale lice. It has no back fins at all. The blue whale's body can be various shades of bluish-grey dorsally, and somewhat lighter underneath. It has a long, tapering body that appears stretched in comparison to the stockier build of other whales. The head is flat, U-shaped, and has a prominent ridge running from the blowhole to the top of its upper lip. Lastly are the minke whales. They are the second smallest baleen whale. The minke whale is black, grey, or purple in colour. Common minke whales are distinguished from other whales by a white band they have on each flipper. Their long back and tiny dorsal fin, 2/3 of the way down their back, is quite distinctive.